How would you define anxiety?
Okay, this is an interesting question because the thing is, when people haven't suffered anxiety to a high level, it can be really difficult for them to understand what people are actually
Hmm.
going through. And there's definitely this disconnect between people that would say they suffer with it and people that really haven't suffered with it, because it's almost like we equate what we regard anxiety as what everyone's suffering with or dealing with, and so we can't quite empathize with it. It's difficult to completely empathize when you haven't been there. But in terms of defining anxiety, it's an emotion. That's the thing I would say first off. Let's get back to basics. And it's really, if you was to say, fear is the emotion that says stay away from the danger. Anger is the emotion that says go and right the wrong that has been done you. Anxiety is the emotion that says pay attention to this important thing right now. And it could
Mm.
be for a number of reasons why we feel it, why we're finding ourselves focused on it. But that's the purpose of it, is to focus our attention in a certain area for whatever reason that might be, whether it be about our safety, our future happiness, all that sort of thing. It's kind of it's that thing, whatever it might be, whether it's visceral in terms of a feeling or whether it's just a thought process. It draws us towards the important pressing issue.
Worry is it? Is it's like a worry?
It can be worry. Yeah,
It
absolutely. A
can
lot, a lot of
be.
people that when I started out in this business, the word anxiety wasn't used much by clients, certainly not in the UK. It was something we're all still dealing with the same sorts of things, but people would say, oh, I'm worrying, or I'm stressed, or I'm
Right.
overwhelmed. They didn't necessarily stroll in and say, Tim, you got to help me with anxiety, because it wasn't necessarily the thing we were defining our emotional issues as. But I think these days, there's a lot of talk about anxiety. A lot of awareness has been built, especially with the nature of online content and social media. So as a result, we're a little bit better educated, but we're also, as inevitably with social media, we're also slightly miseducated at times as
Right.
well. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I always say like one of my greatest strengths is like the ability not to worry. I feel like it's a superpower. And like I'm someone who like won't even lock my doors or won't even like I if I think there's a low percentage of something happening, I like eliminate it from my mind. And I've
Yeah.
definitely been somebody who's been accused of this in private conversations, even public conversations, that like I don't understand the empathy of it. And I will say I
Mm,
spent a lot of time thinking about it or
mm,
engaging in the subject and trying to understand it from other people's points of view.
yeah.
Now, do you think that it's starts at like a biological level? Some people are more prone to it.
Okay, that's kind of a deep dive topic in terms of
Yeah,
what the
yeah.
origins of it are. I mean, I know a lot of people will regard it as genetically driven, and there's evidence to, I say evidence, we don't really know, but there's evidence to suggest some people are more genetically predisposed to higher anxiety than others, based on certain research that's been done. But even those people that would claim a genetic origin, it doesn't happen without the emotional driver, without the situation that we're perceiving. Yeah. So
That's what I've always like kind of had the rebuttal with is like, well, it seems like anxiety always ties to a situation. Like
yeah,
if
a
somebody
lot of the
is
time,
doing
yeah,
bad in life, loses their job, that oh now you have anxiety. It's not a coincidence.
yeah,
I think it's
and
based
also
upon
I think
situations.
it's when we've been through a lot as well. We learn our emotional responses at quite an early stage. It's really
Mm.
sort of early childhood level that we're learning how to respond to the world. And you get a lot of people when they haven't been through anything. I say haven't been through anything like particularly challenging, and I'm not trying to dismiss what other people have been through and trying to, speak for other people. But for example, I've seen a lot of people in the last 12 months who are suddenly extremely anxious when they haven't been before, simply because, well, they've never had to deal with a global pandemic before. So now there's
It's a
there's
new
certain
one.
thoughts going on, yeah, that weren't necessarily fired up before, and now this, for the first time, they're struggling. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that when we go through that first struggle, that the people that haven't been through, the what would you call it, the trauma when they've been brought up, the real struggles, the difficulties, they can be a little bit more prone to the kind of the ebbs and flows of the tide in the future, because they're not necessarily as resilient as those that have really been through the mill and
Right.
have toughened up in that sense.
How how would you define? going through trauma. I mean, I think my dad died of ALS when I was 12, and I had to move schools a lot. And I
Mm.
always say, like, those were tough times for me. I made it through, and
Yeah.
I went through something. Now, okay, I moved around schools in America. Like, it wasn't that bad compared to other people. Like, if I look
Yeah.
at somebody who has had a much worse life, I don't know, a soldier or someone in Africa with no food,
Yeah.
mine's nothing. So, like,
Yeah.
is it how
I
you
think,
frame it in your head,
yeah,
or
I
is
think a
it?
lot of people will use the word trauma for very extreme cases. For me, I class trauma as any event or experience that caused us to develop an emotional strategy in response to it, going
Mm,
forward. And so it could be a really extreme strategy. It could be a
mm,
real state of confusion as well. A lot of the time when we're dealing with our emotional responses, we don't agree with them. We think they're inappropriate, but the part that's driving our emotions is in a state of confusion, and that's where the disconnect happens.
so it's
But so
emotional
for me,
reaction, emotional
sorry.
reaction, an
Yeah,
emotional.
that's it. I think I don't just reserve trauma for the actual things that we would say are real life-changing situations. Anything that causes us to have a new emotional strategy going forward for similar
Mm,
situations, I would say is potentially we could regard as a traumatic learning. Obviously, there's certain things we would say are the higher levels, and for certain people going through, like war zones and
hmm.
displacement and things like that, yeah, we would definitely recognize that as trauma. But also, I
Right.
wouldn't dismiss the what we might call the lower level stuff. Just something
Okay.
happened, it created a sense of confusion at that time, and as a result, we now have an emotional response attached to similar circumstances.
Like